so-called relative truth and absolute truth, Kunzop Dempa and Tundam Dempa in Tibetan, are actually two sides of the same coin, two different aspects of the same reality. So first of all, they are of the same nature. It's not two parallel, separated realities, are two different aspects of the same reality. I will try to make it simple. Okay? Relative truth is how things exist. It's basically the fact that everything is interdependent. So the relative truth of a flower is the fact that a flower exists as an interdependent phenomena, depending on the basis of imputation, which is its parts, and the imputation of the name, which is the value attributed by the observer. But basically, relative truth is how the flower exists. The absolute truth, making it simple, is the fact that the flower does not exist in an absolute way. The absolute truth of the flower is that the flower lacks absolute reality. In other words, is the fact that the absolute truth is basically what we call that the flower lacks inherent existence, is empty of inherent existence. That's the absolute truth of the flower. Why is the flower of absolute truth? Why is the flower of the nature of emptiness? Why is the flower lacking inherent existence? Because it is interdependent. Because it exists in a relative way. So if we use other words to explain this, we could use the term in which we say it's not really precise, but it helps to understand. But we could say that we live in a subjective reality. And we have the objective reality and the subjective reality. So the world as we perceive it, it's a subjective reality. And the objective reality is the lack of objectiveness in the relative reality, in the subjective reality. Is the fact that things do not exist in an objective way. So the lack of an objective reality is the so-called ultimate truth. So why we divide relative and absolute is just because of our own ignorance. A Buddha is said to perceive everything as it is, without making the distinction of relative and absolute. But because of our ignorance, reality appears to us as if it was absolute, as if it was objective, autonomous, independent. And so, we need to put an effort to see the interdependence, to see how things exist. And we need to oppose to our ignorance by understanding that things lack such inherent existence, autonomous and independent existence. So that's why we need to realize the ultimate truth by realizing the lack of ultimate reality, the lack of autonomous, independent, inherent existence, by first realizing interdependence, which is a so-called relative truth. But we go from this shift between relative and absolute, actually in order to put the two together, in order to realize phenomena in their own true nature. But it's important to understand that relative truth and absolute truth are nothing more, nothing less than two aspects of the same thing.